to all inspiring chefs, cooks, and everything in between alike. This is Griever, your guys' host as always. This is my bar, the place I'm always at. And this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the final, the ultimate, the definite ending chapter of Shokugeki no Soma. Let's get cooking, because I missed something. I missed something at the end of 314. And it said that the last chapter would be titled, It Reaches Its Grand Conclusion series, and the title will be End. That was in a very little footnote there at the bottom of the last page of the last chapter, and I kind of missed that because when they said there are 3 chapters remaining, I did not believe they included the one that release notice was about. So I thought we were going to 316 up until Twitter and everything started blowing up, and I realized, So, yeah, that's why my hype and what I wanted to talk about and stuff for the last review was not as grand as it should have been, because this series is great. I own every volume to date. I'm up to volume 30. I own every single volume up to volume 30. And I will probably continuously buy them up until, well, there's no more volumes, right? I want to own this entire series. And I've actually, once in a while, I reread some of the older volumes, some of my more favorite volumes, right? Like the Autumn Election and things like that. And overall, just one bad arc. Had, for example, a perfect way of looking at this, had Bleach ended at the Fullbring arc, that would have been considered almost worse than the Thousand Year Blood War arc and how it ended, right? Because when you rush someone, and I feel like that this could have been handled much better, but this one arc does not paint the entire series with a bad brush. It just can't. This series is more than just one piece of drywall with one coat of paint on it, right? There's just so much else to it. And the first 15 volumes, I would argue, the first 20 volumes are great. They're really good. There were some some low points, some lull points that I just was kind of like, okay, it's a chapter, let's move on. But overall, I really, really enjoyed the potential of the series and really loved the series as a whole, even though this arc was probably the worst thing that could have happened to it. Everything that could have basically gone wrong with the series, and as I said in my video last year about the potential to fixes and how this arc can still be salvaged and fixed, at every opportunity, at every turn, they just didn't take their chances. They didn't take that opportunity to get those sales back up, to get people intrigued again, get them interested. But overall, I just wanted to say this before we get underway with review, is that nonetheless, this series is still a great series to me. It's not one of the greatest series of all time, but it's still a solid series. I would say it's about 250 chapters strong-ish, and it's ending now at 315, and like most shonen, unfortunately, the last 40, 50 chapters is usually nothing really to write home about. But in this case, are we really going to blame the last 40 chapters and just forget the other 200 plus? I'm certainly not going to. So I just want to say once again that this series was very fun to review. I've been reviewing it a very long time on both of my old channel and this new one. And, I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss reviewing this series. So that being said, guys, let's get underway with the chapter, because there wasn't really a whole lot going on. I'm very shocked by the way this chapter went down. I feel like the chapter could have done a lot more. I feel like the last few chapters should have been constructed differently. But overall, this chapter as a standalone, as an ending to the series, well, see, that's my problem. That is my problem right now, is because, as we know, let's just get the cat out of the bag. At the end of the chapter, we see that it's going to be picked up by Giga, the monthly Shonen Jump sort of deal, right? And there's going to be 3 more chapters called Shokugeki no Soma Led Dessert. And I'm like, okay, or something along those lines. And there's going to be 3 more chapters. And including, and they make a note of an epilogue. So, is this really the ending? No, it's more of those, it's that same treatment that other series have gotten before, and it's just kind of like, all right, we're going to take this, we're going to throw it at a monthly series, going to throw it at a new magazine, let it continue for its initial, last 5-10 chapters, and then we're going to call it a day. So, I'm fine with that, and I hesitate to really get into the nitty-gritty of things because there's still going to be 3 more chapters. At least that's the way we've been told that's going to happen. There's going to be 3 more epilogue chapters to tie up some plot holes, tie up some backstories, and tie up some loose ends. As far as I read into it, that's what I read. What did you guys take away from that? However, as a chapter, this chapter was fine. It worked well. I was fine with the most part of it. As an ending chapter, no. And the whole classic, and we are featuring, volume 1 today. Ending sort of the way it began. That's a nice niche, but it came too quickly. There wasn't enough payoff, and there's that little problem with it. Now, basically what happens is Arena, is tasting the food. She's finding it absolutely delicious. She strips down the whole bit. She has her foodgasm. It's wonderful for all you, perverts out there. It's an absolutely wonderful shot. And basically all that I see happening is they go on to explain the complexity of the grill lines of the pork, just, and it oozes in with the egg and then the rice, and it takes on a totally new flavor with every bite, the usual stuff that we get with Shokugeki no Soma and people's reactions and how they try to explain it away. I'm not going to get too deep into this one because this is not a dish that I personally would probably eat. There's just a few ingredients that I'm just like, meh, I could take it or leave it by the sounds of it. However, apparently it's absolutely divine. It's completely delicious. And Arena finds it as such. Now, Soma basically goes on to say, look, the reason I made this was because this was the one you made, I might have passed the summer camp, but you beat me by a wide margin. You've always been, he tries to basically tell her in a few words, you have been basically a goal, because Arena's sitting there going, when did he have the time, how did he polish his skill to this level, and why this dish? And that's all Soma says is that, well, this is the first dish you kind of showed me. It was the first one you presented to me, and it blew me away, and I knew I was not on your level then, so I continuously tried to improve myself to the point that you can say delicious. Same idea. Now, in her mind, she says it's delicious, of course. But do we get that payoff? Not exactly. Now, what I find more interesting is that after they talk about Arena simply is saying, okay, if that's the case, but why? And someone basically looks and says, you were the person that's always stood here, always up here, and I've always tried to reach that goal, but that's not the person you're being right now. What you need to do is you need to find who you really want to cook for. You're not trying to cook for me. You're not trying to cook for them. Who do you really want to cook for? And this goes back to Joshiro, which once again, Joshiro, #1 chef in the verse, and he can always win because he found this answer long before everyone else. And it holds true here. It doesn't need to necessarily be like a husband or a wife or a lover or a boyfriend or whatever. It can be someone as simple as a parent or a mentor or something. The one Arena wants to cook for more than anybody else in the world is her mother. She simply wants her mother. Now, once again, since chapter 300 and the twist of her personality basically doing this, like you're flipping that omelet one too many times sort of idea with her personality. And yes, food puns, I've got them. That to me, as you guys know, I have not been a huge fan of, but this reasoning here at the end is fine. I wish there was more build-up, but I'm not going to blame that because that's just a shortage of time and chapters. So I can't really fault it too much. I find it a little like, this is what I've always, I've been so lonely and stuff. I'm like, no, you haven't been. You haven't been. You've literally, ever since the Regiment de Cuisine, I mean, you want to talk about loneliness before because of Azami and all that stuff, but, Joshiro and Sazanama were a light in that darkness, and ever since you joined school, you always had, your best friend and assistant, and you had your whole the Elite 10 thing, and then after that, you had all the Polar Star dorm, and all those people there. You had Alice, you had Rio, you had all these people. You had Megami and Soma. Soma, of course, really big. And all of them, she hasn't been lonely anymore. So I didn't really like the way they translated that. I hope it's fixed in the official translations, because to me that's almost insulting of, once again, my big problem with her personality flipping is it's a big insult to me for her character and her character development across 200 plus chapters to just say that this was her end goal, this is what she's wanted all along. Soma at least has stayed consistent. He hasn't, regardless of anything, he still wants Irene to stay delicious, he still wants to take over the diner, he still wants to win the blue, and he still wants to beat his dad. These things have stayed since Volume 1, and they have not changed since. Arena's goals seem to flip-flop a little bit, and they make it sound like this is what she wanted all along. Even given the backstory, this is not something that was built up properly, so even though we know about Mon all of a sudden and all that stuff, suffice to say that she just says, I want Mother to taste my cooking and such like that. Here's the interesting part. We get our final reference to the storm, and as you guys know, I think that's the biggest highlight of this arc, is that they introduce this concept fully developed, and not just Suzanaman, and not just in the past arc and stuff, making these metaphorical sort of, we all believed, I don't know about you guys, but I believe the storm was a metaphorical thing to talk about anxieties and stress levels and depressions, right? That's what, when it happened to Joshiro, I took it as it was symbolic. It was simply a physical representation of a metaphorical, of an illness, of anxiety, of stress, of depression, of those type of things that he went through as being expected to be way up here. Even though he's here, people want him to go higher. It's like there's nothing beyond gold medals. There's nothing beyond number one. But people wanted him to go beyond number one. And that was something that just aided him, as we know, right? So one thing I do love, I'm fine with that representation, but one of the highlights of this arc, if they did so much wrong, this is something they did well. They physically represented that storm, and they pushed it home. Every character knows, every main staple person knows about the storm and its consequences and what it does to chefs, and it is an actual thing. Not physically, but it's a true thing that they all recognize and stuff. And I mean, you could still lead into the metaphoricalness of it, and the analogies and all that such. But I really like, that's one thing the arc did really well. And here we get our final reference to the storm, where Mana says about Azami and herself and how this happened. And this I didn't mind. This made a lot of sense. Basically saying Azami and most chefs, when they face themselves with the God Tongue, they eventually get scared. Doesn't matter how good their cooking is, they want it to exceed expectations. They want that, okay, you've checkmarked all the boxes. You don't experiment like Joshiro and Soma do. You don't change any single part of the recipe. You do everything precisely. It has to be perfect. If it's not perfect, no matter how good it tastes, it's not going to satisfy the God Tongue. And that's where they faulted. They bring back the point system a little bit here, which was referenced way early Shokugeki, and Modern references it here, which I feel is a little out of place. But it's simply to state, and they have limited panels, of course, is that they weren't really caring about creating new dishes and trying to go further into the storm. They lose almost their aspect of their cooking, their style of cooking along the way. Suffice to say, what I took away from it is that no matter how good a chef you are, if you start to basically do the central style of cooking like Azami, you actually lose your own personalized style, and it actually makes you a worse chef. You're not able to do that. Your skill level actually goes down because you don't improve any longer, and eventually the God Tongue does what it does and says, I'm bored of this food. This food, it tasted good once, but I've had it before. And since you can't improve along with the God tongue because you're so afraid of messing up, it's just like people on a test day, right? You know, you've studied your heart out. You know this stuff back ways, 4 ways, every other 5 ways from Sunday. Yet, because you're so stressed out and depression sinks in and you think you're going to fail, you start forgetting simple stuff. You make simple mistakes, like you're doing a calculus level exam and you mess up 2 + 2 = 4. You don't even notice that you're not following BEDMAS. You're not following the Pythagorean theorem. You're not following the most basic mathematical concepts, subtraction, addition, that kind of stuff. You're not even following the basic rules because your headspace has been so twisted by the threat of failing, by the threat of not succeeding, by basically being scared shitless. And that's a real life thing. It does happen to people. And I fully appreciate what they tried to represent here and show. I will admit that it is very nice to see that Soma found this answer and Mana recognizes this because she gets out of her chair and says, this boy, he doesn't care. That's not what he's after. He cares nothing about points and nothing about making a perfect gourmet dish and stuff. And we already knew this about Soma. And this is once again why I believe Joshiro can make the dish that everyone's been after this arc. Joshiro can make it. I have no doubt. But that's beside the point. Fact of the matter is that you found someone to cook for. We saw it perverted with Asahi, going after Reina, following Joshiro's advice that you need to find someone to cook for. That's what makes you the best in the world. And Joshiro is the best in the world, and he found someone to cook for, Soma's mother. Soma found someone to cook for, and that's the nice thing after this, because Mana realizes, oh wow, one day they might be able to do something with this. And Soma looks at her and says, basically, Dad, I think I've done it. I finally found my Soma cooking, his own personalized style, and this is basically his recognition that he has. It's a bit of a love confession, a mental love confession, admitting to himself that he has feelings for Reina because he knows what is required. You need to have love for a person. You love someone so much that you want to cook for them. You just want them to be happy when they sit down and eat your food. That's all you want. We see that with Reina here. We knew it happened to Joshiro. We knew that is what Asahi was after. And even to a lesser degree, we know certain combinations like Hayama and June or Rio and Alice and people like that, their combination is that they wanted the other person to succeed. They cared so much about the other person. So it can be totally platonic and stuff as well in certain circumstances. Not that I don't ship Rio and Alice, but anyways, besides that point, yeah, it's very nice because I think it suits Soma. Soma's not going to get down on one knee and basically be like, I realize that I've always loved you. He's never going to say it like that. He did, as we saw him trash talking Asahi about it and saying, you'll never make her happy. I mean, it's that's my job pretty much, without saying it in so many words. And here he even thinks to himself mentally, I found my Soma cooking because he's in love with Reina. So it works, right? It works. And I think it fits his character. Not every character is suited to say, I love you in those 3 simple words. Sometimes they need to be done in different words, in different phrases, and you have to take certain things in context and play with it a little bit. So I took it as that. It's great. That part was fantastic. And the fact that everybody kind of got trolled. I didn't think she was going to say delicious. I was still harping on the fact that she'll still have that level of arrogance and pride once she eats her food, and she'll get the confidence back, which kind of happened after, flip-flopping a little bit. And she basically says, no, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Compared to what I'm going to make, it's going to be nothing. So we do not see, excuse me guys, we do not see what Reina makes. And we have no idea because this is where basically someone just sits back. Everyone else is shocked. He's like, yeah, I figured you wouldn't say it. So, well, I'm never going to stop improving, so you better wait for the day where you have to say delicious. And Reina says, I have no intention of losing to you ever again. So I'm going to do this stuff, right? And then that's when, we get the final shot of the chapter, and someone's just like, all right then, bring it on. And that's it, right? So we didn't see Mana taste the dish. We don't know who wins the blue. We have no idea if Arena made something that appeased her mother or surpassed Soma or anything like that. Yeah, as far as an ending goes, there is too much. See, I'm of the firm belief that had this been the true last chapter, without all the 3 more chapters in Giga scheduled for release, this chapter would have been vastly different, or it would have been given like 35 pages, right? But it wasn't, because I believe is that they have scheduled this out, they worked out a deal, and before this chapter was drawn and released, they worked it out with Jump and said, okay, you can have these 3 more monthly release chapters to tie up loose ends, tie up the story, get all that out of the way. Okay, I'm going to firmly believe that, because elsewise, like, there was a number of different things you could have done in the last 2 to 3 chapters to answer all the questions, to give us a proper epilogue, to tie up a lot of plot threads. Without these next 3 chapters coming out in a monthly release, this would be one of the, if not the worst. And I can't see Bleach, Naruto, Toriko, Beelzebub, Shaman King. I'm probably missing some really terrible ones. Fairy Tail. I can't see any of those endings being this bad. If this was the true final chapter. And that's why I say I'm withholding judgment right now. Because as a chapter, it's good. We got our characters doing their thing and everything. It's fine. But as a final chapter, it is absolutely probably the worst final chapter I think I've ever seen of a single shonen series. Or a single manga series, I believe. I can't think of any else that are actually worse without finalizing things. No matter how much Deus Ex Machina, no matter how much Nakama power-up bullshit, no matter how much that makes no sense and very cop-out 10-year, 5-year time skip into the future to tie things up. That's still at least conclusion. This doesn't conclude anything. So, once again, I'm sitting here telling you guys right now, I'm betting on the next 3 chapters, having a proper epilogue, and I will withhold judgment of this chapter, because elsewise, I thought the chapter was fine. It was actually pretty good. What do you guys think is going to happen? What do you think led to... I'm going to still review this down here behind the bar for the next 3 chapters that come out, and then we'll have a proper send-off for Shokugeki no Soma. I don't know what I'm going to do yet for that. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the chapter. I hope you enjoyed the review. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, it's always very much appreciated. This has been Griever with your final chapter, Shokugeki no Soma, chapter 315, End. It's been a long road, guys. Either way, drink responsibly. See you next time.